Have you ever wondered how swiftly alliances can crumble? Just 6 months ago, the scene was entirely different, a friendly handshake between two powerful leaders, smiling for the cameras at a summit in Astana. Today, a deep, icy rift divides them, one so wide it can't be covered up with empty diplomatic phrases. Let's rewind a little. For years, the relationship between these two nations resembled a fragile dance on thin ice. Attempts to find common ground with Turkey's current leaders have repeatedly failed, even when it seemed like an agreement was within reach. Unexpected blows came from the side or the back, for reasons nobody could quite understand. It's as if the script was lost in a bad play where actors fumble their lines, and the director has vanished without a trace. On a state level, there is little hope left to mend fences. Consider the humanitarian front, it's no better. The present Turkish leadership has pushed tensions beyond what even they might have anticipated. Russia is now forced to impose restrictive measures, especially affecting economic ties and tourism. This creeping Islamization trend invokes the ghost of a visionary leader who would be turning in his grave. Meanwhile, Russia keeps a firm watch as militants from the North Caucasus settle in Turkish territory, receiving shelter and medical care despite repeated objections. These militants exploit the visa-free entry system, switching to Turkish passports and vanishing into cities both in the Caucasus and Russia's sprawling urban centers. The shadows of this reality haunt countless conversations. Despite repeated appeals to Turkish counterparts to halt such practices, nothing changes. The breaking point? Turkey's open support for Ukraine, pushing for Sweden's NATO membership, and refusing to coordinate actions in Syria. For Moscow, these moves felt like one act of betrayal after another. It became clear that Ankara wasn't playing its usual multi-step game anymore. The choice was made, and the consequences followed swiftly, like a thunderclap no one saw coming. What exactly triggered this unraveling? How did friendly handshakes turn into cold shoulders? And what role do unmanned drones, grain exports, and covert military maneuvers play in this high-stakes drama? Stay with me. The next chapter will expose how a sudden gift of advanced drones to Kiev shattered lingering illusions and pushed this fragile relationship over the edge, triggering a cascade of tit-for-tat conflicts that reverberate far beyond. Could this be the moment where old camaraderie dies, and a new, harsher era begins? The story is just unfolding, and it's far from over. As tensions between Russia and Turkey escalated, the media spotlight turned to shocking incidents and deteriorating relations. Turkey's defense minister, Yasar Güler, downplayed a recent drone attack, claiming investigations would prove the absurdity of any Russian involvement. Meanwhile, Russian media launched a campaign urging citizens not to travel to Turkey. Reports filled the airwaves, stories of inflated prices, rude staff, and latent threats for Russian tourists surged. September brought a staggering blow to Turkey's tourism, plummeting nearly 60% compared to the previous year. In popular resorts like Antalya, entire hotel wings shuttered, and staff layoffs became common. Turkish newspapers raised the alarm bells. The economy's lifeline was losing up to $50 million daily. Down in Novorossiysk, a seemingly minor event unfolded, a report from the Russian consumer watchdog about a shipment of Turkish peaches, nectarines, and grapes found infested with quarantine pests. The total consignment of 54 tons of peaches, 30 tons of nectarines, and 20 tons of grapes was sent back to Turkey. While it appeared routine, analysts saw it as a political message. Each shipment could now face heightened scrutiny. Then came September 11th, as the Turkish cargo ship Darren Dennis entered the Kerch Strait just past 4:20 a.m. Moscow time. Initially cleared, it suddenly attracted the attention of the FSB border patrol boats. Sources revealed that a decision had come from the highest levels of power following urgent intelligence. The ship was redirected to Timansk for a thorough inspection, igniting what would become a high-stakes confrontation. Official releases from the FSB stated that, during the checks, traces of explosive materials, including dinitrotoluene and citral, were discovered on board. The implications of such findings sent shockwaves through military and diplomatic circles. But just how deep does this conspiracy run? What unforeseen consequences lie ahead for both nations as tensions continue to spiral? The echo of exploding tensions reverberates through the air, leaving a haunting question lingering in the shadows: how far will both sides go to defend their interests? Amid rising tensions, the unexpected inspection of the Turkish vessel Deren Deniz began to unfold intriguing revelations. Following meticulous checks, Russian security officials discovered traces of explosive substances, indicating potential threats that sent shockwaves throughout diplomatic circles. As investigators dug deeper, they learned that the ship had last been docked in Kilia in late July. By August, it had undergone a complete crew change, with 12 Ukrainian nationals taking over, and intriguingly, it had changed its name from Marinka Star. This alignment of suspicious facts left even seasoned experts astonished. Captain Mehmet Yildiz of Turkey insisted he had no ties to previous missions and was oblivious to the explosive residues. However, ship logs revealed his signatures only appeared after the name change, deepening the mystery around his vessel. Military expert Igor Korchenko weighed in, stating, "Too many coincidences cannot be a mere chance," during a recent broadcast. The Kremlin reacted swiftly. On the evening of the same day, Russia's Ministry of Transport made a significant announcement. Starting September 16, all vessels loading outside Russian territory would find the Kerch Strait closed to prevent the transport of banned goods that could jeopardize critical infrastructure. This blockade effectively cut off Turkey's essential supply route to crucial ports like Taganrog, Rostov-on-Don, and Yeysk. These ports were instrumental for Turkey in trade involving substantial volumes of Russian grain, coal, and metal, generating millions in profits. Now, that revenue stream was halted. In response, Turkey's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a scathing statement. Spokesperson Tanju Bilgic accused Russia of economic blackmail and infringing on navigational freedoms. Behind the scenes, however, panic gripped Turkish diplomats. A source from Al Jazeera disclosed they never anticipated Moscow's response would escalate to a full blockade. With economic experts from the Central Bank of Turkey warning of impending disruptions in wheat supplies and rising bread prices, the scope of the crisis became apparent. Official statements from Moscow remained sparse, adding to an increasingly complex situation. Could this blockade lead to a full-blown economic confrontation? The stakes were rising higher than anyone could have predicted. In the previous chapter, tensions heightened as the Central Bank of Turkey warned that new restrictions could disrupt wheat supplies from Russia and trigger a spike in bread prices. Meanwhile, the public dialogue from Moscow grew more elusive, with officials mumbling obscure justifications, leaving many questions unanswered. The depth of the crisis cast a long shadow. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, was hardly reassuring when he said, "Measures are taken solely for navigation safety and protection of Russian infrastructure. Everything else is speculation." In contrast, government analysts voiced their thoughts candidly. Political scientist Sergei Markov declared, "Turkey attempted a double game and lost. Russia has shown it can bring Ankara to its knees without firing a shot." The next day, the newspaper Yeni Şafak posed a bold question, "What will you say now, Mr. Erdogan?" The authors wondered if Turkey's gamble of playing both sides was costing it dearly. President Erdogan chose to maintain a deafening silence. No official remarks about the incident were made, no urgent meetings of the National Security Council were called, and no addresses to the nation were delivered. This silence was already being deemed ominous in Ankara. Meanwhile, whispers emerged from diplomatic circles that secret talks took place in Geneva on the night of September 11 to 12 between Russian and Turkish representatives. Russia demanded Ankara halt drone and military supplies to Ukraine, remove Turkish instructors from the region, withdraw from NATO exercises in the Black Sea, and recognize Russian sovereignty over Crimea. Failure to comply, they warned, would lead to a new wave of economic measures. Feeling the pressure, the Turkish delegation was reportedly in shock and requested time to weigh their options. Analysts calculated that if Russia proceeded to block the Kerch Strait and reduce the export of grain and energy supplies to Turkey, Turkey's GDP could shrink by as much as 4% by year's end. Given the country was already grappling with a currency crisis, with the lira plummeting to a record low of 45 to the dollar, the situation could become catastrophic. Erdogan found himself cornered. If he backed down, he would lose face; if he escalated, the economy could crumble. Would the fierce game of diplomacy and power play end in ruin for Turkey? The world watched with bated breath, as the stakes grew higher and the risks multiplied. In an unexpected twist, relations between Russia and Turkey have spiraled into chaos, leaving both countries on the brink of an economic showdown. Just 6 months ago, Presidents Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan were shaking hands with smiles for the cameras, but now, a chilling divide has taken root. Was it betrayal or diplomacy gone awry? The cracks started to form after Turkey's surprising support for Ukraine and the announcement of ambitious military shipments, including advanced drones. An electric tension fills the air, with both nations positioning for the next strategic move. Ankara's decision to donate a hefty batch of state-of-the-art Bayraktar drones to Ukraine unleashed a seismic shift in the geopolitical landscape. The clarity of those intentions felt like a betrayal echoing through the Kremlin. Russia, witnessing this unexpected aggression, responded with cold calculations and grave warnings. The precise boundaries of friendship were redefined, leaving Ankara scrambling for cover amidst an array of economic repercussions. Could Erdogan's dual approach lead to disaster? As the narrative deepens, Turkey's economy faces a devastating blow. Analysts predict a potential decline of up to 4% in GDP by year-end, driven by disruptions in grain and energy exports. The Turkish lira has plummeted, reaching alarming lows against the dollar. Erdogan stands at a precipice. To backtrack could cost him political currency, while escalation could lead to an economic abyss. What will be the price of his choices? In the quiet corners of maritime discussions, whispers of potential solutions weave through tense conversations. Could a diplomatic ladder of de-escalation be the lifeline Turkey desperately needs? The atmosphere thickens as financial pressures mount, insurance premiums for voyages soar, and shipping contracts hang in the balance. What's at stake for Turkey's economy if it hesitates too long? The gravity of the situation reveals itself with each passing day, with Turkey's potential isolation looming ominously. Now, as negotiations unfold behind closed doors, military and economic experts speculate, were the traces of explosives found on a Turkish cargo ship mere coincidences, or a strategic pretext to impose a blockade? Every detail unravels a web of uncertainty, and the stakes climb higher. What hidden agendas lie beneath the surface of these complex international waters? The clock ticks as Turkey's financial landscape teeters on the edge, and no one can predict who will emerge victorious in this battle of wills. Anticipation crackles in the air as both nations brace for the next chapter of this unfolding drama. Summary: in the complex geopolitical landscape, Turkey sought to separate its maritime disputes from long-term projects, but the business community perceived this as a narrowing room for maneuver. Meanwhile, Russian authorities emphasized the importance of navigation safety and infrastructure protection, while discussions of potential de-escalation emerged. As Russian officials delivered briefings, they echoed a singular mantra: navigation safety, safeguarding critical infrastructure, inspecting gray supply chains. Behind closed doors, maritime insiders whispered about a potential de-escalation ladder. If Turkey would agree to joint inspection teams involving neutral inspectors and allow laboratory verification of samples from the detained vessel, navigation through the straits could return to a whitelist status. This solution, though politically uncomfortable, would make sense to insurance and port services. Meanwhile, intermediaries were stirring. Secret talks in Geneva had evolved into a more structured route: Ankara, Moscow, Geneva, and Istanbul. The Swiss were poised to offer a venue for a specialized United Nations Maritime Commission focused on humanitarian aspects, while the International Maritime Organization was ready to provide legal frameworks for potential inspection protocols. Turkey maintained that the traces of explosives found were merely a reason for caution, not definitive evidence. On the other hand, Russia insisted that such provocations don't arise in a vacuum, necessitating mechanisms to prevent recurrence, not just statements. As tension simmered, the sea remained unsettlingly calm. Turkish coast guards intensified their surveillance near the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, while Russian vessels operated under an extended checklist in the Azov Sea. Ukrainian ports remained vigilant, monitoring notifications from their neighbors. No group desired a dramatic incident on the water. The stakes were too high for everyone involved, from flour mill operators and exporters to coastal travel agencies and winter airlines. By midday, the internal political landscape in Ankara began to take shape. The question loomed: with the stakes rising, how will Turkey and Russia navigate this intricate web of tensions? The answer could alter the course of regional politics forever. As the pressure mounts, an unexpected twist awaits as both nations are forced to re-evaluate their strategies. Dive deeper to uncover the hidden maneuvers and unfolding drama that could change everything. In a world where politics and economics intertwine, the delicate balance between Russia and Turkey has been shaken to its core. Just 6 months ago, the leaders exchanged warm handshakes at a summit, but now their relationship is frayed, strained by betrayals and shifting allegiances. The stakes have never been higher, with each decision rippling through the economy, affecting lives and livelihoods. As tensions escalate, Turkey's economic team pushes for a swift agreement, a limited deal to restore predictability and ease the pressure on the declining lira. Yet, whispers of weakness haunt the political headquarters, wary of appearing submissive. The two scenarios are alarming. A harsh approach could trigger chaos in tourism and agriculture, while a diplomatic path would require the difficult task of justifying a change in foreign policy to the electorate who has been fed a rhetoric of strength. Amidst this uncertainty, pragmatic discussions have replaced grandstanding. Industry associations from both nations are meticulously debating technical regulations, who notifies whom, how to create safe corridors for vessels, and the criteria for verifying compliance with standards. Each detail diminishes the arguments from extremists on both sides. The most realistic outcome in the coming days involves an interim protocol with a 3-tier verification process, preliminary screenings of documents and routes, selective inspections involving neutral parties, and retrospective reporting on outcomes. In exchange for pausing sensitive deliveries to Ukraine, Turkey would cool contentious contracts while Moscow would ease restrictions on carriers and essential goods. Yet, amidst this complicated maneuvering, there are no triumphant victors. Each nation knows the stakes. They are not just headlines but the real costs of bread, fuel, and the economic health of cities. As the dry mathematics of supply chains loom large, every misstep threatens to destabilize not just borders, but the very lives of the citizens caught in between. Who will blink first in this high-stakes standoff? The next move will likely be quiet, revealing the intricate dance of diplomacy unfolding behind closed doors. In the previous part, we explored how any disruption in logistics can have dire financial consequences. The stakes are high, affecting everything from bread prices to corporate financing. Despite the pressure for bold statements, the likely next step will be a quiet and calculated response. In the world of international diplomacy, the weight of mundane documentation can shift the course of nations. Protocols, signatures, phone numbers of duty officers, and standardized notification forms all form the backbone of what many may dismiss as tedious paperwork. Yet, it is this very bureaucracy that gives rise to what is often hailed as political wisdom. Emotions might fire up a room, but they dissipate quickly when the real issue at hand is not one of prestige, but the supply needs of an entire nation. Imagine the murmurs in the hall of an agreements office, urgent whispers about the fate of trade routes, an impending shipment of essential goods. The air is charged, filled with the scent of anxiety and the ticking clock of negotiations. Stakes are high, leaders tread carefully, balancing between making firm standpoints and the necessity of cooperation to ensure the well-being of their citizens. As negotiations unfold, what seems like a simple oversight in a supply chain could lead to catastrophe. The rumble of cargo ships and the faint clamor of bustling ports become the backdrop to this tense narrative. Yet, while the politicians grapple with grand ideas, the reality is grounded in numbers and logistics. The mechanisms of trade, delivery timelines, and the certification of carriers weave a tale far more intricate than the fiery exchanges that might grab headlines. What if, behind the scenes, a fragile agreement begins to form? Could this be a path to stability, a return to normalcy? As discussions turn to technicalities, the undercurrents reveal a slow but steady movement toward resolution. The question remains, will the players set aside their emotions to embrace a pragmatic approach, or will audacious decisions reignite tensions and jeopardize the fragile balance? As we dive deeper, prepare for a twist that could shatter perceptions and redefine alliances. In an unprecedented twist, the bond between Russia and Turkey, once bolstered by friendship, spirals into a chasm that no diplomatic repair can bridge. Just 6 months ago, leaders Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan shared smiles and handshakes at a summit, a facade shattered by recent betrayals. The roots of this conflict run deep, fueled by Turkey's support for Ukraine, its backing for Sweden's NATO membership, and the abandonment of joint efforts in Syria, a trilogy of treason in Moscow's eyes. The dramatic shift began in June 2025 when Turkey surprised the world by announcing it would send a substantial gift of modern Bayraktar TB2 drones, equipped with cutting-edge GAZ-9 guidance systems, to Ukraine. This act, perceived as a shot heard around the geopolitical landscape, ignited a tinderbox already fraught with tension. In the ensuing weeks, sluggish responses from Moscow gave way to escalating resentment as Turkey blocked Russian grain shipments from its ports. Moreover, Turkey announced joint military drills with Poland in the Black Sea, further tightening the noose around diplomatic relations. It culminated in August with a memorandum establishing a strategic partnership with the European Union focusing on security, a grave provocation that left Russia seething. Maria Zakharova, the spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, couldn't hold back, saying, "Our Turkish colleagues seem to have forgotten who stood by them in their direst moments and saved their economy from collapse. Russia can forgive much, but a knife in the back is unacceptable." Moscow's response came swiftly, igniting a conflict that would unravel further in the days that followed. On September 3, drones, likely perpetrated by unknown forces, striking a Turkish military base in the Idlib region, triggered fear in Ankara. The explosion reverberated, detectable even 50 kilometers away in Latakia, a ringing alarm of deepening hostilities. While Ankara brushed it off as absurd allegations of Russian involvement, the shadows of treachery hung heavy in the air backstage, leaving Russia prepared for counterstrikes in this evolving geopolitical drama. But will Turkey's miscalculations lead to an economic collapse, or can Erdogan salvage not just the nation's economy but his reputation? As sensational reports swirled in the media, urging citizens to avoid travel to Turkey due to escalating tensions, the stakes grew higher, revealing a UAE, United Arab Emirates, that is slowly drifting away from its past confidences into treacherous waters. Even as officials stayed tight-lipped, murmurs from diplomats hinted at urgent discussions in Geneva, diplomatic negotiations hanging by a thread. Will Ankara relent under pressure? Or will it risk everything in a desperate bid to maintain its dual loyalties? The chessboard is set, and every move resonates with higher consequences. Only time will tell if they can navigate this turbulent battleground, or if the pieces will fall cruelly into place, shattering more than just agreements. In a rapidly changing world where alliances are fragile, a once-friendly handshake now reveals a chasm between nations. The tension between Russia and Turkey, which only 6 months ago seemed manageable, has evolved into a severe diplomatic crisis. This fallout began with Turkey's unexpected support for Ukraine and its moves to strengthen NATO ties, culminating in a series of actions interpreted by Moscow as betrayals. As a result, the fabric of Russian-Turkish relations began to unravel, with startling implications for both countries. It all escalated in June 2025 when Turkey made headlines by announcing its delivery of a generous supply of upgraded Bayraktar TB2 drones, equipped with the cutting-edge GAZ-9 guidance system to Ukraine. This act of support reverberated through Russia like a shockwave. While the Kremlin's initial response was muted, the undercurrents of tension grew increasingly evident. Soon after, Turkey blocked the export of Russian grain through its ports, a vital lifeline for Russia's economy. The situation intensified further when Turkey proclaimed joint military exercises with Poland in the Black Sea, a move echoing alarm bells in Moscow. The culmination of these events led to Turkey signing a memorandum of strategic cooperation with the European Union regarding security. For Russian officials, this was the last straw. Maria Zakharova, spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, emphatically stated that Turkish leaders seemed to forget who stood by them in dire times. As if orchestrated by fate, the response from Moscow came swiftly. On September 3, a mysterious drone attack obliterated an ammunition depot at the Turkish military base in Al-Hadar, Syria. The explosion's force was so tremendous that shockwaves were felt in Latakia, 50 kilometers away. Neither side claimed responsibility, yet Syrian sources suggested the strikes were orchestrated from regions controlled by the Syrian government. Turkey's defense minister, Yasar Güler, attempted to deflect blame, dismissing suggestions of a Russian connection as absurd. Meanwhile, in Moscow, there was a nonchalant indifference. In the aftermath, Russian media buzzed with a campaign warning against travel to Turkey. Accounts of inflated prices and unwelcoming staff painted a grim picture for potential tourists. According to the Russian Association of Tour Operators, the number of Russian tourists visiting Turkey plummeted nearly 60% compared to the previous year, leaving hotels in Antalya shuttered and staff laid off, crumbling the tourism sector, a vital economic artery for Turkey. As the crisis deepens, can Turkey navigate these treacherous waters, or will they find themselves struggling under the weight of economic turmoil? What will the long-term impact be on their foreign relations? The echoes of past friendships now resonate with betrayal, leaving an uncertain future to unfold.